I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Okay.
Hello, everybody. I think it's exactly 12 o'clock. So we'll give everybody about a minute and a half more to join, and then we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barbara Mayetta. I'm with 12 Points Wealth Management, and I want to welcome you all here today. As many of you may know, at 12 Points, we have a group of women advisors here who focus on working with women and helping them understand and take control of their finances and to focus on their futures. We experience all of the time in our own lives and also with working with women, we hear often about women sometimes struggle with finding their happiness and with potentially that working its way to anxiety and depression. So I've been talking with one of our neighbors in our building here where we work, Alana Dabana, and she is the executive director of Windhorse Counseling. And we've been chatting about the struggles that women have, especially as they're getting on to the middle years of their life, where they are balancing work and family and home and elderly parents. And it really can be a difficult time in life for them. And that maybe we should all be focusing a little bit more on our mental health and what would be the opportunities for doing that and how can we go about doing that. So Alana is here today to help give us some guidance as to where to get started. Welcome, Alana.
Barbara, thank you so much, and thank you for this opportunity. Before we get rolling, I just want to mention it is a beautiful day, and so my neighbors have all jumped on this opportunity to landscape right at noon. So if you hear any background noise, I apologize. Thank you so much again for having me. We are neighbors. Windhorse Counseling is just upstairs from 12 Points. So I like to say the Damon Mill building is one-stop shopping. Just a little bit of background. Prior to my time at Windhorse and in counseling in general, I was a publicist. So I worked with WGBH and PBS Kids, quickly jettisoned myself, even though that was really very fun, and made my way into the world of mental health. Windhorse was founded in 2025. It was just me for a long time. And during the pandemic, for very obvious reasons, we started to expand. It was a time when there was not enough help available for people. And I was able to hire so many of my favorite colleagues who had to manage their own mental health and the needs of their families and the needs of their professions, and thought that maybe the freedom of private practice could do that. So we're a team coming from a variety of different backgrounds. We serve adolescents and adults. We do anxiety, depression, life transitions, divorce. We handle all sorts of things throughout the lifespan. And we also have a lot of specialty areas. We offer coaching, we offer eating disorder recovery, performance psychology, you name it. And I think maybe the defining feature of our practice for Barbara is that we have 4 office dogs. So we like things to feel pretty homey and cozy. So again, thank you so much for having me. And I am looking forward to talking about this. Okay, so my style is pretty informal. We are collecting questions. If you have a question, please throw it in the chat box. We'll make sure we address it at the end, but there is no question too big or too small. And I want to say right up front, and we'll say it a couple times, if there are any questions you have that feel sensitive, because often talking about mental health in public produces some lurking and there are things that people might not want to say, please consider me a resource. You can reach out to Barbara, you can reach out to me directly at any time, and we will again give you the information about how to do that. So let's get into it. We can talk about why women face mental health challenges in the workplace. Some of this will be a little more agnostic and some of this will probably hit home. And for those of you who aren't necessarily in the workplace right now, please know that a lot of this also translates to volunteer opportunities, a vocational interest, any place you are required to be and required to perform, a lot of it's going to apply. Barbara, would you say that's true?
Absolutely. We all do a lot more than just work, but all of these things feel like responsibilities we need to deliver upon.
It's true, absolutely true. Okay, so let's talk about these challenges specifically. We have them in 4 camps, although this is by no means an exhaustive list. The most basic, of course, is stress, which is the widest umbrella. So stress, as some of you may know, absolutely impairs your overall functioning in a number of ways. A quick neurobiology lesson. So our prefrontal cortex, which is that very advanced part of the brain that we are always hoping our teenagers and young adults are finished developing, manages higher cognition, such as reasoning, decision-making, being able to put things in a logical order. That part of the brain requires the most resources that we have. We were designed to experience acute stress maybe once or twice a day. And to put this in perspective, that could be, oh my gosh, there's a tiger over there, we gotta go. Or, that's funny, last time I saw yellow in the bush, I got bitten by a snake. So that's what our system was designed for. Now, in our modern lives with technology and all of our demands, our systems are being acutely stressed. When we experience this, our prefrontal cortex shuts down. So that is a long-winded way of saying when we are stressed, that higher function, the reason, the logic, the ordering, the decision-making is very compromised. And I don't think I have to spell it out for you guys why that may be challenging in a professional environment. Stress, as we know, if you're paying attention to any news, social media, magazines, anything, will tell you it's the leading cause of illness, and we have more and more data to back that up. And some of you may be saying, like, I like some stress. I competitively do a sport. Stress is inherently part of my job. Some stress makes me tick. That's great. That's all well and good. I think one thing you may want to consider for your mental health is eustress versus distress. Distress is a state of your brain and your body being in agreement that something is stressful. So the snake in the bushes, or you're in traffic and you're late for a meeting, or your toddler's having a meltdown and you're on a webinar. These things are all stressful and your brain and your body agrees they are stressful. Eustress, for example, might be your favorite musician is in town and they're doing a live show and you have seen them a million times, but this is the only time this year you get to see them. So you are going to go to the MGM and you're going to stay up late and you're just going to muscle through work the next day. Your brain has agreed that this is a really fun thing, but for your body, there's no valuation. It's just stress. So eustress and distress, good stress and bad stress, are still perceived as stress by the body, and the cumulative effect is a loss of energy. Okay, second thing we want to talk about is burnout. So burnout, again, if you're paying attention to any sort of media inputs, you know, it is absolutely epidemic right now. We are all a little bit overloaded. We're all trying to do too much, and we're all trying to do more than our systems can typically handle. Again, because our systems really haven't evolved to meet modern demands. The early warning signs of burnout, they're sneaky. There's a phrase that we use in counseling called anhedonia, A-N-H-E-D-O-N-I-A, yes. And if you want to look that up, you will see that what that means is it is a loss of pleasure in things that you ordinarily deem pleasurable. We often tag this as the first sign of burnout, right? Like, you don't really want to go out to dinner, and like maybe you don't want to go to your quilting guild, or maybe you don't want to go to your karate class, whatever it is, and it feels a little bit off. That would be an illustration of anhedonia. It's not screaming, but it's something that's really present. It feels like a shift and it's pronounced for you, like it's weird for you. The other thing that we were looking for in early burnout would be fatigue. And fatigue is going to be something that we talk about repeatedly. So fatigue is a steady state for a lot of us at this point, but just know that that is a precursor to full-blown burnout and something that makes you a little bit more vulnerable. And we're going to get into some of the causes of fatigue and what you can do to help manage that. Full-blown burnout is a little bit different. You have all of the things that are aforementioned, but they have piled up to such a point that your symptoms are either mimicking or could be diagnosed as depression, anxiety, an inability to rebound, right? Like maybe you go on vacation and you just don't feel rested at all, and maybe you don't even enjoy your vacation. Burnout is interesting. We talk a lot about self-care in our culture, and people think maybe a spa weekend is going to fix it. But burnout has a long and individual timeline. It takes nervous system reset. We usually have to hit it from multiple angles. Usually helps to have some professionals on board for that. But it's a slippery slope. It's something that is recognized in our culture, but we're not quite sure what to do about it yet. And another thing to think about with burnout is it doesn't really stay contained to your work life. It really has holistic impacts. You'll tend to see it coming out in your relationships, maybe your parenting. It lacks your ability to be present in most situations. Advancement is a biggie. So we're talking about all these things that could be a factor, but when we consider the overall picture, women typically have more interruptions in their professional timeline and statistically are more likely to be the first responders in other areas of their lives. So when there's something going on the home front, women are more likely to respond to the needs of their partner, to respond to the needs of their children, to respond to the needs of their aging parent. We will talk about this a lot during this presentation because I think this is present for all of us. Because of this, and because women are doing this more than their male counterparts, sometimes it results in you can't be as present at work. You might have to be late more often. There are days that you might have to skip. So that is something that often slows down women's professional trajectories. I did look into some research from a variety of sources, and it seems to be that the agreement is men have a 24% faster time to promotion than women. So the research actually bears out that while this cultural phenomenon is going on for decades, it's still pretty present. And to that end, we're competing with men often. And a side note, this is pretty heteronormative, this presentation. So if you feel like this isn't applying to you or every situation, know that we know that and we understand that. But for the sake of the conversation and for the sake of a lot of the research and data we have, we're going to make heteronormative examples. Men typically in your heteronormative standard union have more support at home. I will say though that the pendulum is beginning to reverse. Women are still more likely to be responding to, like we said, the needs of families, partners, outside organizations, the home, and career responsibilities, but we are seeing that begin to shift. It's not a dramatic shift, but it's there. All right. Sorry, go ahead, Barbara.
Oh, no, I was just going to add, boy, you and I had chatted about that a little bit, that I really experienced that. Okay, so I may be a little bit on the older side than a lot of our audience here, but as a baby boomer, absolutely men were that I competed against in the workforce had support at home. Their wives might have worked, but not 60-hour weeks, and it's really hard when you're taking on all of the home and trying to be at work competing against men who aren't taking on all of the home, that it just makes more stress in the workplace.
Yes, absolutely. Very well said. And we will touch on the generational piece as well on this slide. Why are women facing mental health challenges? They have lots of roles. Again, we are probably preaching to the choir. I can't see your faces, but hopefully some of you are in agreement with this piece. Your kids. The expectations for parenting, I think if you were to speak to the generation before you or the generation prior to that, I think everyone would be in agreement that the expectations for parenting are far more complex for every generation and the demands are quite a bit higher. That being said, when everyone has decided culturally or community-wide that there's a right way to do things, it's hard to feel like you're the person working against the tide, right? Like if there's a push for people to stay home and raise their children, it's very challenging sometimes to be the person who has a nanny or outside help raising your kids. We're just recognizing that sometimes it's hard to be different, even if being different is the thing that's going to save you in your mental health. Man, that landscaping's right under my window. I apologize. Okay. The same is true in a way for your partner. So in a lot of ways today in the zeitgeist, your spouse isn't just your spouse. There seems to be this current expectation that this person should be your best friend, your other half, your ideal partner in every way. And someone could have the best union, but that might not be the full description. Challenging this expectation, again, often goes against the tide and what you might see on Instagram or social media. So it does take a certain amount of resources to be able to do that. Our needs today also are often changing more quickly than we can identify them and then communicate them to our partners. And that's challenging too. And that's a two-way street. That's true for them as well. And as Barbara mentioned, there are generational challenges. Barbara, when we were developing this presentation, talked a lot about how the baby boomers were groundbreakers with having a career. The boomer women were really the first ones in the workplace for the long haul. It wasn't just a job anymore. So they were the first ones who were even thinking about this balance, right? And still are, right, Barbara?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Gen X and millennials, the challenge exists, but it's a little bit different. We were told we are the you can do anything, you can be anything generation, and man, have we internalized that. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to check all those boxes, be everything for everyone. I don't think we have Gen Z here today, but I'm sure it's a little bit different for them too, and those challenges are still developing because they are still developing too. When we are in that role, right, when we are so capable, when we are balancing everything, we're also not leaving room for our partner to step up and fill the void when you actually need support. And that's something we'll talk more about too, and how to challenge that. Your parents, people are living longer, but health span and lifespan are often at odds with each other, which means your parents, thank God, may be around for longer, but their demand and need for you may be greater as they age. And as people have focused on their careers, have waited a little bit longer to have children, they're often finding themselves in a care sandwich, meaning they're taking care of kids and they're taking care of folks up the lifespan too. So you think about just that fact, not spouses, not friends, not avocational interests, plus a career, that's a lot going on. Household responsibilities, we all have them. They can be outsourced, but is it financially or culturally comfortable to do so? Being able to outsource it is not necessarily an option for everybody. And often, especially in my field, when we look at families, we see that families have evolved with set roles around ownership of household responsibilities. There's always someone who seems to be responsible for the dishwasher, and there's always someone who's putting the laundry away. And that doesn't seem to vary as much unless someone's making a really concerted effort to do so. And this can be true even as a person's career responsibilities change. And that's also something we'll address a little bit more later. Your career, whether there's a clear corporate ladder or you're self-employed, having a career comes with implicit and explicit expectations and markers of success that are hard to put aside. And when you find that you can fill an entire day with parenting, partnership, care, household tasks, it's sometimes difficult to find consistent motivation for career advancement, let alone meeting your basic responsibilities. Work-life balance, I think you're here because we're thinking about that a lot. In the parlance of our friends Gen Z, the math doesn't math. When we consider all this, there really aren't enough hours in the day for people to really be able to do a great job with work-life balance all the time. And then social expectations. When I was formulating this presentation and I was talking to my friends who are in that care sandwich and they're professional and they're, in a committed relationship. And I said, well, what about friends? And they said, which was, tongue in cheek, friends? Who has time for friends? Your friends are going through the same thing. So sometimes it's difficult to find alignment with them, right? Everyone's schedule is demanding. And because of that, you're missing out on the protective factor of community support. Another thing to think about is our representative self versus our authentic self. Our representative self is that face that we present to the world. And sometimes we're still doing that to the people who are closest to us because we think they have it all together and we're the only person who can't seem to put all these pieces in order. So when we are all presenting that, we're not showing up authentically. And in our industry, we say the space between your authentic self and your representational self is where things like anxiety and depression and just general unrest mushroom up. So in short, it sounds a little dismal, but we're getting there. No one escapes this life without feeling the strain of the commitments above or some combination thereof. So let's talk about the consequences. What are the consequences? So Barbara and I were talking about this and we came up with a list of consequences, and what we realized It's actually a cycle, right? So what we were talking about, when you have all these demands and you're sort of in the pre-burnout stage, one thing you're consistently experiencing is fatigue and lack of focus. As a side note, that's leading to a lot of conversations about ADHD. That is the thing we are hearing most at the office. Do I have ADHD? And it's mostly coming from women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even older, who maybe weren't showing signs of any sort of attentional challenges when they were younger. So that may be true. There may be diagnosable attention challenges, but so much of that is connected to fatigue. When you're in that state, for all the reasons we discussed, your productivity is actually impaired, and therefore often at work, absenteeism increases. Because of that, career advancement is often delayed, and simultaneously it feels as though your family's neglected, that sense of maybe not being enough and not showing up in the right way across the board. All those things together can lead to depression and anxiety. The consistent thing you're experiencing with depression and anxiety is fatigue. So it really is quite a cycle. And again, if you are a person who is not in the workforce right now, I think you can probably plug in any sort of large initiative that you're involved with, and you may be experiencing something similar. If this is ingrained in our culture right now, and we're already strapped, is it possible to shift it? Or, as Barbara joked, do we jump to a better life through chemistry? We'll discuss. What can you do to help yourself? The good news is a lot. There are so many things. I think the way we talk about them, though, can be broken down and put into some very simple frameworks. So if you were to go to a professional and start talking about these things, any kind, your primary care, a dietitian, a functional medicine professional, a therapist, a prescriber, the thing they're going to want to talk about first is your biology, which can be frustrating for some people, but the good news is biology is at the root of all of these things. So if we can start with tackling our biology, you are a good chunk of the way to feeling better. Sleep is the biggie. This is not news for anybody. We should be getting 7 to 9 hours a night on average. If that sounds impossible, there are definitely ways to help. And all of the professionals that we mentioned have different interventions for sleep. You can do cognitive behavioral therapy for sleep. You can do proper supplementation and diet that supports sleep. You can work with a professional or a coach around changing your evening routines and getting support around maybe getting the kids in bed earlier, maybe breaking habits you have with your spouse so that you can actually get yourself to bed. But the good news is sleep is workable. Movement. Movement is also a non-negotiable, and I want to scale it back. We have always talked about it in terms of exercise. I think when we think about exercise, it creates a mental block. A lot of people that we talk to think, oh, I don't have time for a workout, so I can't do that today. It's not really about working out. It's just about moving your body. Your body, which is still very connected to what it was biologically designed to do, wants to move around gently. And that can be stretching in your chair. That can be taking a walk outside, right? I like to think about movement in terms of snacks, movement snacks. Almost nobody I know who's sort of at the apex of their careers and their home life and taking care of people around them has time for a big workout. Like these people are generally not going to bar every day or CrossFit. So think about, can we get 10 minutes of movement in several times a day? And the ripple effect will probably amaze you. Even a little walk around your building or the parking lot, it will regulate your sleep. It regulates your wakefulness. It helps curb emotional eating, right? It will help a lot with your mood, your productivity, managing your stress. So scale it back if you have big expectations for yourself in terms of exercise and just start thinking about movement. Hydration. Hydration is a biggie. Every cell in your body, particularly those cells that are creating neurotransmitters that regulate your mood, needs to be hydrated. It is mostly made of water. I won't go into the ins and outs of hydration, but if you are hydrating well and feeling like it's not doing enough for you, throw some electrolytes in there because electrolyte imbalance can also impact your mood. Everything impacts your mood. That's the whole point. We're getting there. Nutrition. Nutrition is a biggie. Blood sugar stability is one of our #1 interventions for combating burnout, stress, depression, anxiety. Blood sugar stability, if you are unclear, this is a great thing to talk to a dietitian about. This can be one meeting with a dietitian that's covered by your insurance. Blood sugar stability often means eating every couple hours, keeping a couple snacks in your bag, right? Making sure that you're getting a good balance of carbs, fats, proteins. Some of that can be processed food. Some of it can be quick things. All these things are okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going for stability. Hormones. hormones are absolutely something to consider for women in several levels. One, our hormones actually vary throughout the day, right? Our hormones govern wakefulness, alertness, our ability to focus, sleep. Our hormone cycle throughout the week, throughout the month. Our male counterparts don't experience any of this, so you can talk to them about this and they'll be absolutely not helpful. And then also throughout your life chapter. So if you haven't put any focus on your hormones and you are very concerned about your mood and your mental health, it is often worth it to talk to your doctor, an endocrinologist, a functional medicine professional, to sort of gain an understanding of where you are with your hormones, what can be shifted, and then on a daily, weekly, monthly, and sort of life chapter basis, when is a good time for you to push? When is a good time for you to rest? When is a good time for your mental acuteness so that you can schedule in those more important work tasks? Hormones are sort of the underpinning of all this, and we're just starting to understand how women's hormones impact the rest of their lives. It is absolutely worthwhile to stay on top of that information because it will affect you personally and professionally. And then community. Community is part of our biology. We are designed to be around, connected to, and supported by other people. So if that's something that feels like it's missing, that's something that a professional can actually help coach you in redeveloping. And just as a note, you know, I think a lot of us try to tough through a lot of these aspects of our lives, but you really can't supplement, train, or buy your way out of a major imbalance in any of these areas. But I promise paying attention to it will absolutely pay back dividends. I shouldn't be using financial analogies in front of you, Barbara. I'm sure they're not exactly correct. Another thing we like to talk about with our clients is your personal board, right? I personally am fortunate enough to have friends from childhood, high school, college, my various professional lives. I have mentors. I have people I have chosen to keep in my life because they are bringing something to my life. They are part of my personal board. So a lot of times when I am stuck on a topic, I'm not sure what to do, I need some guidance, I think about who's on my board and who do I go to. And sometimes I realize there are holes in my board and I need to hire, which can sometimes mean adding a therapist, adding a specialist, adding a dietitian, like we said, consulting my doctor. So it's really helpful to think about who's on your personal board. Like, yes, we can do everything. It's just not sustainable. So lean on your board members. Another analogy we like to use with our clients is thinking about your slices of life. Barbara, do you mind bouncing to the next slide for 1 second?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, so slices of life. Your life pie is gonna look different. Everyone's has some basic fundamental pieces like family, like community, like connection, like friendship, like professional or project-based life, right? For me, horses are a big part of my life, so that would be in my life pie. I've always been a reader and creative, so that's part of my life pie. Think about the slices of your life pie and see when you draw that life pie if you can come up with the proper percentages for all of these things. A lot of us at this stage in our lives are going to see that work, family, managing a household, those things are going to take up a very large percentage of the pie, and that's great. However, I can guarantee that if there is not time for play, creativity, and rest in your life pie and a significant amount, it's going to be coming out on your mental health in all the ways that we mentioned. So these are things that in midlife, we actually have to actively work to put back in. And when we do, it fuels our ability to be present in all of the other slices. So keep an eye on your life pie, the breakdown, and the percentages. Can we flip back? Thanks. Another thing that we like to talk about is granting yourself permission. So a lot of times when we're counseling someone and we say, you know, have you ever thought about maybe stepping back from that project you're running for your nonprofit? And they say, oh no, I can't. And we say, why? And they pause and they say, I don't know, I actually just can't. And I believe that we all have things in our life that we could do, but really think we can't because the answer feels complicated, or getting to a solution means doing something that's uncomfortable or novel. No is a complete sentence. Granting yourself permission to step back from things is really important. And to our next piece, leaning out. Most of you probably remember when Sheryl Sandberg came out and wrote her book, Lean In, which is pretty laughable. Sheryl Sandberg is one of the wealthiest women in America, and she is incredibly accomplished. Sheryl Sandberg does have the opportunity to lean in because Sheryl Sandberg has a ton of resources and support, much more than most of us have. And if anyone is on this presentation and they have Sheryl Sandberg type resources, none of this will be for you. I'm just assuring you. But for most of us, I think the practice that's going to keep us upright and ticking along and healthier longer is actually leaning out. And what is leaning out? Just as it sounds. So yes, you are capable. Yes, you are the person who can do anything. But what happens if you don't do it, right? What happens if you are not the person who empties the dishwasher? That's a very small example, but it's something that even amongst my friends and family has caused great strife. Everyone has a control issue with the dishwasher, right? But if you are the person who empties it and you step back, who steps up? Some people say, well, no one will. I don't know, maybe you should try it and see. When we don't lean out from responsibilities and tasks that have fallen on our plates, we're also not giving people a chance to grow or step in. And a lot of times that is our partner, either our romantic partner, our business partner, and also our children. Our children can grow into adopting responsibilities, can grow into filling the void. And I think that's something that we want to impart in all of them, that it's a great instinct to have. So I would challenge all of you to think about where are the areas in your life where you can lean out. Even some small ones can make a big difference in the course of your day, and that adds up. And the last piece sounds super reductive, but asking for help from family and friends. No one likes to do it. People do really like to help. Determining how help looks for us is actually something that we can get out in front of. People can't help us unless we've taught them how to help us. To extend that, we are constantly teaching people how to love us and how to take care of us. So this practice actually extends further and helps us get our needs met more easily. Okay, so let's talk about therapy. We're finally there. Most people who've been to therapy will tell you that getting there was significantly more difficult than being there. And most of them wish that they'd sought help sooner. How do we know when it's time to bring in a professional? So the short version is that this is going to depend person to person. We're going to use that caveat quite a bit. But in general, how to know when a professional could help? When you're experiencing emotional extremes or a significant departure from your baseline, which is very personal, that can mean different things to different people. Plot twist. As we've alluded to, solving this isn't always a counselor. That could be a movement professional, a coach, a physical therapist, a massage therapist, a prescriber, a dietitian, a functional medicine professional. So these things can be happening. It doesn't automatically mean therapy, but a therapist can be a great jumping off point. When you do find a professional to help you, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you're going to do that, encourage your professionals to communicate with one another. So that can mean if you've been talking to your primary care physician about sleep and how challenging sleep is for you and how that's increasing your anxiety, and you bring on, let's say, a prescriber. You want to work with a prescriber, like a psychiatric prescriber, to figure out if there's anything we can do about your sleep. Sign a release, if you're comfortable, to have that prescriber talk to your doctor. Let those professionals wrap around you and share information. If it makes sense for you and if it's comfortable for you, it's a wonderful thing to do. It takes weight off you in terms of relaying information between professionals, and you may not know what is going to be the most relevant piece for those professionals, but they will. Collaborative care is the new standard of care, so there is a sense of building a team to help you, like we would do in a professional environment, right? When it's career-based, we need to do that in our personal lives as well. And something to think about, you know, therapy is probably not what you saw on The Sopranos or Mad Men. Therapy takes a lot of forms these days. So when we work with a lot of female professionals, we hear, oh, it has to be virtual, which is great because the time they have the most control over their day is during their work day. So they're not going to leave and go to someone's office. Almost every therapist, I would say, offers virtual therapy at this point. So we all practiced it during the pandemic. We're all really good at it now. Some people, speaking of the pandemic, feel relief in returning to an office. There's something really special about going to an office, leaving your stuff there, and walking out the door again. That's still really nice. Everyone's office feels different. Sometimes there's a dog there. Sometimes there's great plants and light. Sometimes there's good snacks. So I am a big fan of in-person therapy if it works for you and your schedule. Other types, getting into modalities, there's yoga therapy. Sometimes there's canine or equine assisted therapy. There's expressive therapy, which is art and music based. There's somatic therapy, which is about feeling in your body. So for people who may have been athletes or are more kinesthetically based, sometimes that's really appealing. There's also farm-based therapy, which is like a beautiful setting in which to sit and think and really sort of reformulate your life with someone. It can be very healing. So, but what if we think it's more a need than a want? How do we figure that piece out? So some of these things I'm going to be obligated to say by clinical licensure. So the definition that we use, again, beyond just significant departure from your baseline, especially if it's enduring, is you're experiencing a change in thoughts, moods, biological patterns, and behaviors typically lasting more than a few weeks and making it difficult to manage relationships, life, or work. This is especially true when it's not linked to a life transition or major stressor. What do I mean by that? If you just moved across the country and you're feeling anxiety for several weeks, that's very appropriate. If you just had a loss in your life and the grief is persisting over more than a couple weeks, that's very appropriate. So these are all very situationally dependent. Again, this is going to be at your discretion, but that is the typical definition that we use when we say, oh no, it's time for therapy. Important to note, finding professional help is non-negotiable if you're experiencing thoughts of harm for yourself or for others. It doesn't mean that someone's going to get pink slipped. It doesn't mean that you are going to be away from your family or job. It just means that you need someone on board to help you with that sooner rather than later. Okay, so assuming we have sold you on this process, how do you begin to find someone? And then more importantly, how do you know if they're right for you? How to find professional help. This is one of my favorite things to talk about because there are so many pathways to finding a therapist. I think the most popular and easiest way to do this is to use an aggregator. A lot of people know about Psychology Today. Psychology Today has a great Find a Therapist directory. You can search by gender, you can search by topic, you can search by specialty, you can search by style. You don't even have to know that. You can put in your zip code. Caveat, it should be any zip code that's in your state because most of us are only licensed to work in our state of residence. And then you will have profiles of lots of people. For some folks, that's daunting. For some folks, that feels really good. Something like Psychology Today or ZenCare will also often show you pictures of their office, pictures of them, videos, you can hear their voice. All these things are really helpful, and we'll talk about why. Your primary care professional or your child's pediatrician can be a great resource. Yes, you can ask a pediatrician about a therapist for you. All primary care doctors know the therapists in their area and have several who they love working with. So it's really effective to call a therapist and say, Dr. So-and-so sent me your way. That oftentimes will get that person's attention and they know that it's a good serious referral from someone in their network. If you'd like to use your insurance, and I hear a lot of people saying like, oh, you can't use your insurance for therapy anymore. You can, you just won't have as much variety in terms of who you see, but call your insurance company or go on their website and you should be able to generate a list of providers in your area who take your plan. You can then use that list to cross-reference it against one of the aggregators or just Google the names and you can learn more about that practitioner. It is okay to see someone because you like the look of their office. Like that is as good a jumping off point as any. So do some cross-referencing. It's a lot harder, I think, emotionally to get yourself in the door when you're just going to see someone whose name you've seen, and that's it. Word of mouth is a really great way to find a therapist. I guarantee someone in your life is in therapy, and I guarantee there are people in your life in therapy who like their therapists. Doesn't mean you're going to see that therapist, but maybe you are, and that therapist will not be able to talk about your mutual friend or your mutual auntie or whatever it is. So just know that good therapists know other good therapists, and people like to talk about it. To that end, if you find a therapist you like and that person is full, ask them anyway. So often on the aggregators, someone will say that their practice is full. I can assure you that with every tiny opening in our practice, we don't go back and say, oh no, we're open again. Nobody remembers to do that. Sometimes when a therapist is full, they do have a slot or two open. And if you are a compelling client or you're someone who really fits the bill, they'll take you anyway. And it's just, they looked full and they're not necessarily. The other thing is they will know other people who are very similar to them who are going to be good for you. So if I have a client contact me, a prospective client, and they're interested in doing eating disorder recovery work and I'm full and I can't take them, or they want to use their insurance and I don't take it, I will be able to send them to 3 or 4 people who have similar credentials, specialization, and are going to be a lot like me or work a lot like me, who also do eating disorder recovery, and hopefully I've saved them hours of time. That is something that we promise to do for people and take a lot of joy in. And then finally, ask Windhorse. We can help you find the right resource. And if that person is not within Windhorse, we will help you navigate the local community for all the reasons that we mentioned. We will not rest until you find the right person, again, whether it's Windhorse or not. You will have all my contact information at the end of this presentation, but if anyone's thinking about that, our main line, I'm gonna say it right now, is 978-759-5185. This is an offer that never expires. We would love to help you. How do you know that the person is the right fit? So the strongest indicator of success in therapy is the strength of the therapeutic connection. We call it rightness of fit. Simply put, this is a professional that you like, respect, and you want to spend time with. It's really, truly that simple. I will say you may need to give it 3 sessions. This is a relationship. It does need to unfold, and often your early sessions with a new practitioner is them gathering a lot of data about your life and biodemographic information so that they can have a contextual understanding of you and everything that you're experiencing. That said, sometimes you have a gut feeling, sometimes you have a sense, and sometimes it's not necessarily logical. Here's a potent example that we see more often than not. Let's say you have a sister who's a bit of a pill, and let's say her voice is very particular. And let's say you have an intake with a therapist and she just sounds a lot like your sister. That's never going to be the therapist for you. And you can tell that person. Getting dumped is part of our business. If someone's not right for you for any reason, they understand and they want to know. And like we said, they can refer you to someone else. It almost never surprises a therapist when you tell them you don't think it's the right fit. It's our job to sort of assess that too. And often we have a feeling sooner than you know or think that it might not be right. We're often willing to see it out a little bit longer. The exception to that is if you're looking for a skill, strategy, or specialty that we don't really offer, and then we'll frequently refer you on pretty quickly. A final note on that piece, just before we move forward, everything you do in this process can be undone. It lowers the risk of starting because you're not losing anything, you're not hurting anything. There's nothing in this part of the process that's going to significantly change your life. So I think if you're really struggling and you're carrying things that feel too heavy right now, it's worthwhile to just start this process as passively or as slowly as you'd like, because there's nothing happening here that's going to waste anyone's time or upset anyone. It can only help at the end of the day. Okay. What to expect from therapy? Like I said, it's probably not what you've seen in the media if you've never been. So a question we often get is, how long will I need therapy? Again, this is very personal. So length and duration is something that's usually established between you and your practitioner. At Windhorse, our general rule of thumb is that we want to see a new client at least weekly. Our clients come and see us weekly, bi-weekly, or what we call as needed. So weekly is typically the right cadence to develop a relationship. People sometimes come more frequently. They may come twice a week if they're in a really acute situation, if something has happened and they just need a little bit of extra support. That's typically not a long-term frequency that we use. When you are in a situation that is more maintenance mode, you just enjoy checking in, you are test driving new skills and strategies, and you want to give it a little more time between sessions, we often drop to bi-weekly. And from there, you may say, I'm pretty good. Can I check in with you when I need to? And we say, yes, please go as needed. Or sometimes your therapist will say, yes, but I'm a little concerned about this thing, and we know seasonal depression is a thing and it's November. Do you feel like this is the right time to drop down? So that's going to be something that you guys establish together. Let me just think if there's anything else there. No, I think that's it. Oh, no. Sometimes if you have acquired a skill and you want to road test it or just see how it feels in your life, you may take a little break from therapy. Like I said, you can drop it in terms of frequency, or you may say, you know, I'm going to try this for the summer. Can I call you in the fall if it's not working for me? And your therapist will say, absolutely, that sounds great. We love people road testing the stuff that they've learned in therapy or feeling out whether the changes that they've made in their life are really a good thing for them. So duration is also really personal. You can do a discrete piece of work with a therapist or on a very specific skill, and that might take you 3 weeks, and that's very normal. And sometimes you can be working on something that takes a little longer. It could be 3 months or 3 years. You guys may sort of project a duration sometimes, and you may find that you make progress on that issue or that thing more slowly more quickly. You may find that something comes up and this is connected to something bigger in your life so that you're going for a little bit longer than you thought. Some people love adding a therapist to their personal board, and that's just a person they check in weekly with as a sounding board for as long as they want to. If you are going through something and you do think it is short term and your temptation is to sort of just knuckle under and see how it goes and you're just going to be tough and you've been through harder things, that's all well and good. But know that sometimes establishing a relationship with a therapist for a shorter period of time can be really helpful on a number of fronts. One, that person knows you. So if something goes down and you need to go back to therapy, it's so much easier to start with someone who knows you. Two, even if that therapist is full or busy, they are much more likely to bring back a former client than they are to start with someone new for the reasons we mentioned. It's a lot easier to just pick up than to start with all that getting to know you and heavy lifting. So again, you can talk to your therapist about that. Everyone has sort of an individual policy, but starting with a therapist usually means that person is going to be there for you through the seasons of your life, whether you're actively seeing them weekly or not. Best practices. Talk with your provider about all the questions that you have up front. We are used to answering tons and tons and tons of questions. None of them are too absurd. You're not necessarily supposed to know anything about this process. Your questions help us also guide what your treatment plan is going to look like. We're always holding that in the back of our minds. So, you know, if there's something coming up, if a client comes to me and says, you know, I'm in this conflict with my spouse, I don't know how it's going to resolve. Also, everyone in my family has gotten dementia by 50 and I'm 48. I say, ooh, okay, right? We're going to work on this spousal thing, and then we're going to work on cognitive strategies, and then also anxiety management strategies that have to do with medicine and health, right? We're going to work with health anxiety. So for me, in my mind, I might think, okay, the issue with the spouse could be 3 months, it could be a year, it's the upfront presenting issue, but we're always going to be working on the cognitive stuff, and that might be a couple years. We might be holding that for the next 3-4 years. So all of the questions help guide your treatment. There's no question too big or too small. Another question we often get is about homework. How much should I prepare for sessions? The answer is you can. It's up to you. I would say in terms of preparation, talk to your provider up front about that. Some therapists may give you a little bit of homework to do in between sessions. They may say, hey, practice that script we developed, or like, can you use this strategy before you go into work every day, and let's think about what your anxiety looks like and just tell me next week. You can also bring some notes from the course of your week or the things that you're concerned about, but I will say, it makes sense to not over prepare for therapy. A lot of times when you go in and you think that you're not sure where you're going that day, the best sessions happen. You have to sometimes leave your provider room to work their magic. And the stuff that you have a blind spot to or don't know or don't see can be the stuff that absolutely changes your life. Barbara, I think we're there. I'm wondering if anyone has any questions.
So I got just one question here has come up so far. That what is therapy actually like? Am I, you know, laying on the couch like I see on TV, and do I get to pet the dog?
That's such a good question. So as far as laying on the couch goes, when you see that now, it's always psychoanalytic therapy. It's a style of practice that I think was developed back in the era of Freud. Some people still do it. If you want to do it, it's there for you. It's very rare these days. So no. But most of the time you're going to go in and you're going to sit on the couch, and yes, you can pat that dog, and you can typically invite that dog up on the couch with you. It should be comfortable. That is certainly a piece. And again, that's individual for everybody. Comfort for you and comfort for me may look really different. It should be warm. It should be inviting. You should feel comfortable with that person. You should feel safe. You should feel held. It's not atypical for someone to offer you a snack if you need it, because a lot of people come in with blood sugar imbalance, and as we said, that can be hard on mental health. Some tea, a glass of water. It should be quiet. It should be confidential. If any of those things don't feel right, that's grounds for heading out, and you don't have to say why. You don't necessarily have to know why. It can be a gut feeling, but it should feel like going to see someone that you trust in a space that feels safe for you.
One other here is, should I have a goal for therapy? How do goals work with therapy?
Also a really great question. You can have a goal for therapy. You don't necessarily need a goal for therapy. We have a lot of clients coming in saying, you know, I have panic attacks and that happens a lot when I'm traveling and I'm going to go on my honeymoon in 9 months and I really want to reduce the incidence of my panic attack before we do that. That's so concrete. We also have a lot of people coming in and saying, I just don't feel like myself and I don't know why. If you don't have a goal, you can start there, and it's that provider's job to help you navigate and sort of figure out what comes next. You know, we joke a lot always, we've talked about type A's and type B's, and I think that's really true in therapy too. Some people come in and they're very goal-driven and oriented, and other people come in and they want to feel their way through and just see how it is on a particular day. Either is valid, and your provider should be able to help you no matter where you are.
Alana, thank you so much for joining us. I think that you've been really helpful actually giving people ideas what they can do themselves, and also if they're interested in getting additional help, how to go about doing it. And that's just invaluable to all of us, really. And you see Alana's email address down here at the bottom, both her company's website and her email address there. Please feel free to reach out to her and ask her questions.
Anytime, the offer stands. And Barbara, thank you so much. This is really fun. I could talk about it all day. And again, if anyone has any questions, even about navigating, finding a therapist, please just consider us a resource. It's something that we feel passionately about offering the community.
And also, this presentation will be out on 12 Points website in video format. So if you have a friend or someone who you think ought to hear Alana's suggestions for how to go about, or when you need help or how to go about it, it'll be there for you to see anytime. Thank you for joining us today, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.